So we'll start with current processing and valorization strategy. So before we go into this aspect, so we'll go quick recap. So are we all clear what is bioeconomy? Yeah. All the economic activities to date, whatever we have been carrying out, so we have to have sources from biological origin, as simple as that. And circular economy, so whatever economic practices are ongoing, how we can make it circular. So it includes everything existing processes. So blue circular economy or blue circular bioeconomy. So when we deal with the blue circular economy, most of the food operations will be automatically bio, whereas all other operations which are not of biological origin will be blue circular economy. Yeah. So these three are important aspect. So why do we need bioeconomy? First, for energy, plastic, textile, chemicals and food. The issue is non-renewable, unsustainable resources. Because of that, we are looking for biological origin, that is relying mainly on agriculture, forestry, seas and valorizing waste and side stream. Yeah. So that's new way of looking into the bioeconomy. Now coming to this particular lecture, we are going to focus on current production practices for blue bioresources. When I say blue bioresources, what we are going to describe are different types of biomasses which are there for valorization, what all exist and how we process it and how we can valorize them. So before going into this, so what do you think, what are blue resources? Can you give some examples? Easy one I can say, fish is one, shells or shellfish, algae, that is both micro and macro. Any other? Somebody said the other day corals. Yeah. So there are number of species, some of the species even we are not aware of. So how do we classify them? Because if you are from any of the stream, whether it's botany, zoology, chemistry, physics, classification becomes very important in order to say it. Yeah. So majority of them are known as fin fish. So which contain fins, that is small pelagic, that is herring, sardines, anchovies, medium pelagic, mahi, bonito. There are a lot of different species. There are only few examples. And that varies depending upon the water, depending upon the geographical location. And then large pelagic fish. You know what does pelagic word means? Pelagic is the area of the ocean which is not very deep and which is not very shallow. Yeah. Then you have salmonoids, that is salmon, trout, crab, tilapia, cod, which is deep water. For example, cod, haddock, pollock, demersal fish, that is deep in water. And then we have crustaceans, we have cephalopods, mollusks, aquatic plant, algae, that is seaweed or macroalgae or microalgae, and other aquatic animals, and sea cucumber is a sort of seaweed. So this is not the exhaustive list, but still there is a long list of species and animals and the plants which are present in ocean. And some of those species can also grow in fresh water, and majority of them are listed here are all for marine water. Now, if you'll see all the species here, whatever we know about the fish, shells, algae, big fish, small fin fish, so all the data about them, what they contain, what for they are used, that is mainly coming in either from published or unpublished analytical data. Somebody like exploratory person goes into the water, brings some species, names them and do the chemical composition analysis, that type like what you guys do for any of those survey work, or nutrient value computed using a predicted model, because there is also seasonal variation, size of the fish, which area of the water species belongs to, or calculated values of food and species, in-house empirical measures using standardized method. So in case if we have to do the compositional analysis of any biomass, what are the key compositional analysis carried out? One is a moisture, which is having approximately 70 to 75% moisture is present in most all the species. Protein, 10 to 14%. Lipids, 2 to 10%, or it's not writing on the wall. It's not exactly this number, but it's broadly speaking, the values are. And how much will be, what do you think, how much will be a fat content in shells? Almost negligible. They don't contain any fat. That's mainly a protein and other minerals. So again, you have a ash content, that is mineral composition, again varies in a similar line as of lipids. So what type of carbohydrates are present? Do they contain any carbohydrate? Almost negligible. No, does animal contains any carbohydrate? Very small quantity of carbohydrates, mainly in the form of glycogen and other ones. So these are good sources of protein, lipids and different nutrients. So if you'll see the current production system, this is, I bet you won't like these type of statistics, same do I. Even I don't like the statistics, all these numbers, yeah. So if you'll see total world production, and it is almost increasing quite similar for inland, that is freshwater, and marine remains quite stagnant, the similar one. Same thing for aquaculture is increasing in both inland as well as marine one. That means rather than going for wild harvest, preferring to go for aquaculture, that is production into a localized location. So that means you're part of ocean, you start your aquaculture business there. So if you'll see how much is intended for human consumption, that is an increase. Obviously, we have to keep having higher amount of for food. Non-food application, per capita consumption is pretty much the same. X shares export and value for your sharing of export and import. So there are certain reasons they are overfishing. Can you guess which part of the world will have might be having overfishing? Asia is having huge amount of overfishing, including India. Is overfishing for certain species, and certain species are not used at all. So that is also a negative aspect of blue bioeconomy. That is, we have to have a proper balance. So if you look at again with the production system, and if you see the ocean, and again this classification differs from who's explaining this. Geologists, geography will have different distribution, but as far as fish is concerned, most of the pelagic fish comes in this particular zone. Dermatials will be all benthic, and all those different places will get fish. Majority of the fishing activities are within this zone, yeah, because after that there is again larger species and other species, large species, whale, blue whale and all those things appears. And some of the bacteria, microorganisms coming from the seashore also have a lot of pharmaceutical properties, lot of perfumes, lot of cosmetics are made out of it, and still things are getting explored. So it is not the end that we know this species and everything is done. That is done mainly on a terrestrial plants. Wheat, cod, we know all about them, but not much about the aquatic bioresources. So it's still a huge open area for your research purposes. So if you'll see, this is a pelagic fish, and then there are different zones here. So majority of like epipelagic, meso, bathy, abyssal, hadal. So accordingly you can classify, yeah. So pelagic fish is not a type of fish, but a fish which is grown in a specific area, yeah. Something like if somebody is known as Indian, that means living in India, right? Or somebody living in Europe called European, but that European could be Indian again. Yeah, so that's the way the classification are. But what is the actual classification for these fish? What will be the correct name? We call it jhinga, machli, shellfish, and different names are there. So what is the best identification is by using their zoological name, correct? Similar way that what we use it for botanical name for crops, yeah? So if you look at the marine resources, I'll give you the example of Ireland, where I come from, which is surrounded by sea all around. The similar approach works for any country. I don't have statistics and data for India at the moment. So use a marine organism, sources, or the factory of useful, needful product and solution for societal challenges. This is OECD definition. Yeah. So this includes your bacteria, fungi, other microorganisms, cyanobacteria, that is one way classified also as a microalgae, but this is basically a single cell bacteria. Micro and macroalgae, sponges, mollusks, invertebrate fish, fish co-product, and all other plants. Yeah. So when you look into the literature, you might get something called sea vegetables. So these are also a sort of macroalgae. So if you go again back to the literature, and if you want to see how we can harness our ocean wealth, that policy document was prepared back in 10 years ago, and main focus was for thriving maritime economy, achieving healthy ecosystem. That means ocean, as we know, we did discuss yesterday, is a sink for most of the CO2s, and our engagement with the sea. So any country is having a long coastline, even India's coastline is very long. Do you have any idea what will be the coastline of India? So you can check that, even I don't know exactly what it is. But here in this case, coastline is 7,711 kilometer for Ireland, and maritime territory, that is territory in and around a country, is considered as marine territory for a given country. That is water, you would have seen all those Indian water and international water. International water, that means it doesn't belong to anybody. The range is, I think, 200 kilometers or something, and that is guided by international protocols. So with this, you can see what is marine bioresources and how we process them. And this is really very difficult to identify what is exact processing method for each and every species. Every species is different. Something like you're trying to study the food science in one lecture. Yeah. So it becomes very difficult to cover each and every aspect, how it is processed. So we'll try to do our best how we process them. So first and foremost is harvesting. How do we harvest? So fish one, I am not going to deal much into the fishing side of it, because majority of you are aware of it, whether you take a fishing net or you take a small what do you call that, having a small bait attached to anchor and throw it in the water to catch a single fish for recreational purposes or for food purposes. So there are different types of techniques which are used depending upon the company or depending upon your capacity or depending upon the industry. So it is individual farmers, they go with the smaller ships, or the big company which is having a commercial businesses, they may go with the big trawlers. So this is the fishing part. When it comes to macroalgae, it is either wild harvest, you go to the beach, collect the plants, yeah, and they grow on the rock. This is called wild harvesting. As what we discussed yesterday, if you go in a forest, you see any fruit plant, you pluck fruits. That's wild harvesting. But if you grow those one into a sea, then it is called cultivated or aquaculture. How many of you have seen aquaculture farm in anywhere in India or some anywhere? Okay, they will share their experience. How does it look like?
There are different types of aquaculture systems. Like some kind of species will be growing in stagnant water like ponds. Some will be growing in marine conditions, and some will be growing in running water like rivers. They for culturing the fish in a closed environment, we have to simulate that environment. Pond culture will be there. For that, a blue lining sheet will be a pit is digged, and a blue lining sheet will be
At the
spread over
bottom.
that, and the water is filled, and the TDS and the pH of the water is maintained for the which is equal to the pond. Then in case of for simulating the river condition, the race culture will be there. A cement tank will be built, and in between a wall will be taken. The water will be flowing around the wall. The flowing water will simulate the river conditions for the animals. In case of marine conditions, we can occupy the area in the sea, or else we can add the salt. There will be some salt packets. We can add the packets to the pond culture in our area, or we can directly go to the sea. We can occupy the area of the sea, or we can simulate the salt conditions of the sea in our pond itself.
That's very good. So it's something like in Mutukadu, the people they grow, they're rearing crocodiles. Yeah? No? They're shells and.
In Muttukadu Siba, in Chennai, they are culturing these crustaceans.
Shells.
Yeah.
That's very
For
good.
crabs and.
So you are well aware of aquaculture system, yeah? And there is actually also a guidelines how aquaculture systems are grown, because if you are using maritime or marine area, so when you're blocking the river water, wastewater coming in, it concentrates. So those are the issues as well which has to be addressed for the production. So have you seen the seaweed farm, seaweed cultivation in aquaculture? So that's, I'll be showing you some stuff how this particular seaweed is cultivated. If you'll see this here again, how the seaweed cultivation is carried out into the sea. This is the image which is taken from using drones, yeah. So if you'll, I'll just run a very short video, and I worked a lot with an industry, and then you can see how this seaweed is grown. So whether wild harvest, as you can see, this is, that's me, and with the old Irish industry person, how he grows or wild aquaculture seaweed as well as wild harvest, and this is what is aquaculture. So as you can see, this is again a Dulda Marine is a company where a rope where the spores are added in, thrown into the water, and when it is fully grown, it looks something like this. So that means a single spore which germinates, and some of the wild harvested one which you see at the shore, but at the bottom of the seabed also you'll see all these seaweeds, how they are grown at the bed of the seaweed. So what are their advantages of this seaweed? It's not only for food purposes or application, they are very, very important for protecting the shorelines, protecting your flooding or what you call tsunami, and all those flows are everything is stopped because these plants, and they grow rapidly, and they have one of the biggest advantage. When they grow, they do capture a lot of CO2 from the environment, yeah, because they build a biomass. From where they get, we don't put any nutrients to them. Do we put any fertilizer? No. What is required is only the salt water, and rest all nutrients are covered from there. So as you can see from the seabed, so this is all how the seaweed looks like, and species could be laminaria. No need to worry about these names. I'll cover this one when we go in depth. How do we produce these seaweeds and how it is done in IMTA system or in aquaculture. Laminaria saccharina latissima, you have Ascophyllum nodosum. So some of these species are, and it's not that I went in to get this video, one of our colleague went in to get it. That's why this is having all these seals and everything is found. So this is the way how it seabed looks like, and all these species are grown and they are consumed. So I'm not going to carry forward this full video. Now, this is again, this will give you another idea. This video is again from an American national agency. It talks about what is really a aquaculture. Originally, aquaculture was breeding, rearing and harvesting of fish, shellfish, algae and other organisms in water environment. That's very simple definition. That is culture, that is cultivation in water bodies. Yeah. So, this is very short video which shows how this aquaculture is carried out. Yeah. And now what you'll see in this case, this is what one of your colleague was mentioning about cementing and making water bodies, raising, and this is sometimes the mesh side stuff is seen and you grow fish or shells. Shells are recovered and this is the cooking process, and then this generates the waste, and when waste is generated, shells are separated and meat is separated. And if you go on to this NOAA, and you can find lot of different types of educational videos. Yeah. If you want to, if you're really interested how things are grown. Yeah. So it's all, and this is the best way to explain aquaculture. Otherwise, the design of aquaculture system and all again is a lengthy system, and I'm trying to cover most of the production in a shorter duration. Do you have any question related to this so far? So this is yeah, this is pretty straightforward anyway. So if you look at yesterday, I mentioned about IMTA, that is integrated multi-tropic aquaculture system. So either aquaculture, as your friend mentioned here, about the shells or seaweed or for fin fish, that is integrated multi-tropic aquaculture system. This is from this particular paper, this is schematic diagram, and details of this are from C Bioplus. That is, this is a project which was working, there are multiple number of projects they are running across Europe and other international projects dealing with what is the best way of growing or producing aquaculture. And the next, this image is from Marine Institute, like Chagas. We have Marine Institute, that's Forest Namara. Mara means Irish word for marine and institute. So that's Marine Institute, and website is marine.ie. So they are responsible for all the maritime activities and everything related to that. So this shows the clear picture how the IMTA system works. You have your fish, sea urchins, lobster, sea cucumber, kelp. Kelp is another name of seaweed. You would have seen green seaweed, red seaweed, brown seaweed. So these are all the color coding of seaweed. Yeah. And then scallops, oysters. So all these things can be grown together. That makes it IMTA system. That is integrated multi-tropic aquaculture system. And within that, there are 5 or 6 different ways of doing aquaculture. And Japan, China, and Southeast Asia, they are very well advanced when it comes to aquaculture. Yeah. So this is all how these biomasses are produced by aquaculture. So now, this is just a glimpse of seaweed aquaculture process. First one, if you'll see this particular rope, you have spore inoculation and seeding is carried out on a rope, and then this rope is thrown into ocean. I just leave it there, and after 3 or 4 months, what you do, all this hold fast, that is again the way it holds the rock or a rope. Seaweed is grown, harvested, and then this is the way it is dried and then ready for use. So the rope, spores on it, throw in the water, forget it, and then come back and collect it. So that's the way seaweed is processed. So we have one full lecture, I think lecture number 10, on dealing with seaweed production. I'll go through all the steps of seaweed production as well as microalgae production, how it is being carried out in lecture number 10 is scheduled. So it was only to give a glimpse how the seaweed is produced. So what is seaweed used for? How many of you have consumed seaweed? in any form or the other?
Dairy products, like we'll be using.
That's ingredient like carrageenan and alginates and all those things are there, right? Any other? How many of you have eaten sushi? Yeah? The outer one is the seaweed, that's nori, yeah? So that seaweed is used indirectly or directly, everybody consumes it in some form or the other. So majority of the market is to do with the food and beverage, pharmaceuticals, animal feed, fertilizer, cosmetics and personal care products. So as you can see, Asia Pacific is the biggest one for seaweed production, cultivation and processing. So it's all, this shows the economic value and who is the leader in seaweed. Rest of the world is very teeny tiny, 0.2%, whereas China is a 62.8% and rest of the Asia is 37%. So that's why Europe was not using the seaweed apart from getting agar-agar for lab cultures. So everybody has used that particular media. If you've done the experiments, agar-agar comes from where? From seaweed, yeah? Any idea which seaweed it comes from?
Gelidium and gracilaria.
Gelidium scavona, like Gelidium with S name is there. That is, you boil a seaweed at 110 degrees Celsius for 5-6 hours. Whatever comes in liquid portion, you cool it down, it forms a gel, that becomes your agar-agar, yeah? Alginate production is slightly different. Carrageenan production is quite similar to your agar-agar depending upon what seaweed we use, yeah? So it's not a complicated process to extract those biomasses. So any question related to seaweed production? Anyway, we are going to cover the full seaweed production, both macro and microalgae briefly when we go into the lecture number 10. So just wanted to show the seaweed production is not, it is bit energy intensive, but it is not having any input. So that means all the CO2 for environment is accumulated and it cultivates the biomass and you get carbon capture. That is, carbon dioxide from environment is captured by sea plants and then it offsets the carbon to produce a biomass. So that is one of the way of sinking the carbon by increasing aquaculture production. But it requires the license. So every country, every place there is a different regulations. I don't know what is the current regulation here, but normally if your house is next to a sea, certain areas of the sea belongs to you. So that was a policy. Think is same way if you're living in a forest, that forest area belongs to you. Similar way it was with the sea. And then if you have to start any aquaculture system, you need to have a license because that is again impacting the environment, recreation activity. So you cannot start your aquaculture system on Marina Beach where people are going there for recreational purposes. Yeah. So these are some of the limitations. So now, if you'll see about production of macroalgae, as I said in lecture 10, Bantry Marine Research Station, this is our industrial partner which produces macroalgae as well as small aquaculture seafoods, and that is located in south of Ireland and over here, which is almost 275 kilometers from Dublin, yeah? And this is the Bantry base. So if you are interested in all their projects, you can go into their website, BMRS, that is Bantry Marine Research Station. That's a privately owned company. And I have requested them to provide me some of the information of their production processes, which I have, which I'll be running in lecture number 10. So you can see in reality how it happens, not a theoretical one, yeah? Theoretical one, you can easily look into the literature, you can have a look at all the production processes. And it's quite interesting to see how the seaweeds are grown. And that's their building, and that's the sea which belongs to them for production, yeah. So this is for production of macroalgae. Now coming back to animal one. So out of you, how many of you consume fish? You can raise hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Majority of them, yeah. And rest are vegetarian, I presume. Yeah. So cultivation of seaweed, microalgae looks nice, is green and all, and fish is extensively processed. You all know about the processing. So how fish is processed in India? How we process fish? Suppose somebody is harvesting a fish, it goes straight to your kitchen and you cook it, right? What is a commercial way of processing fish? See, it's not, I'm not checking your knowledge and all, because I am also trying to learn, because there's some other better method is there, we can adopt it. It's a two-way process, you know. Yeah? Go on, madam.
First thing is we have to maintain the cold chain, sir.
Okay, that's fine. You get fish, how it is processed commercially? Yeah, cold chain and all is there, yeah?
Yes, sir. After harvesting, the fish will be frozen in the sea, and while it reaches the shore, after that we have to go for thawing process. And then after thawing, we have to sometimes before freezing, they will remove the gut parts and the heads and the gills. All those things are removed. And in some cases, it is frozen as whole, and after thawing, the rest are removed in the processing plant. And after different types of cuts are there, fillets, different types of cuts are there. And in case of shrimps, for that also different types of cuts are butterfly cut, tail on, like that different cuts are there.
Okay.
After the cutting and further processing, they will be again frozen for further use. This is a kind of processing, and again we can go for pickling, like
Salting, another one. Or drying of fish, another one, right?
yes, sir.
So this shows everywhere the process is different. Yeah.
Yes.
In majority of the European countries, fish fillets are sold in a frozen condition. Yeah. Raw fish is normal. Fisherman goes to the water, harvests the fish, sells the fish. You buy it, come home, you cook it whatever you want to make it, for curry or fish and chips or different product. So if you'll see different type of seafood, so she has already explained. So first one is to have keeping it in a cold condition. Yeah. If it is not in a cold condition, what happens? It starts smelling. It starts smelling because of TMA. Yeah. Trimethylamine. And this is difficult to remove. Yeah. And when we are freezing it, you freeze it, and when you are thawing it, you are thawing it for at least 7 to 8 hours for thawing process. So during thawing process also you get some of the microorganisms gets activated. Yeah. So there are one. So what are the processes how we can increase the shelf life of frozen fish? Either wash fish in chlorine, which is not allowed in most of the places. Yeah, even in Europe it is not allowed. So fish comes in, straightway you wash it, that is called stick water. The muddied water on the fish called stick water. Then you remove the tail or a head, that is deheader or detailing, just to remove the portion of unedible portion or remove the scales. Yeah. Then you fillet it, and that fillet is vacuum packed, goes for sale. Yeah. But in some cases when you are freezing the fish, the majority of the places the fish, the moment it is harvested, straight away it goes for processing. There is no storage in between. Or in some cases it goes straight for frozen condition. Then if you are using ozone in water for freezing, so during thawing process you will maintain its microbial stability, because during thawing process you need a normal temperature, and whatever microorganisms are not growing during the frozen condition will get activated when they get a conducive temperature. Yeah. That's the way you have to design a preservation strategies. Yeah. There is no pulse electric field, no high pressure can go in there, because if you take a fish, put in high pressure, you cannot make a fish cakes, because the protein is completely different. Yeah. Whereas if you put seaweed into high pressure processing, how many of you heard about high pressure processing? Yeah. 400 to 600 megapascals condition. If you put a seaweed at 600 megapascals, even for 10 minutes, nothing will happen to seaweed. Whereas if you put a fish, meat or a carrot, it will become a paste in 1 minute. Yeah? Because seaweeds, where they grow at the bottom of the sea, so they are structurally very, very robust. So they can withstand huge amount of pressure. Yeah? As what we were discussing yesterday, when you go into scuba diving, you start feeling the pressure the moment you go below 5 meters. So coming back to the stuff, so all the biomasses capturing, that is harvesting or aquaculture, and then industrial processing, packaging, and then distribution, wholesale, retail, consumption at household. That is pretty much very simple processing methods. Yeah. So what is applicable to fish may not be applicable to oysters or lobster. Yeah. Lobster or a prawn, they have a meat inside the shell. Is there any way, what could be the processing technique that we can remove the mussels very easily from those lobsters? You have seen the lobsters, right? Yeah? You have to break the shells or a crab to remove the meat. Yeah? And you have a lot of mussels. So if the whole crab or whole lobster or this particular product goes into high pressure machine along with the shells, give a pressure, and then what you will see, if you remove shells, will come out like a shell of a peanut. It's just because when protein is, it expands, shells is robust structure, and then when pressure is released, it contracts, so it becomes easier, it detaches its muscles from the shells. Yeah, so that's the way it works. That is pretty much used in industry at the moment also to help in releasing the muscles. Yeah. So this was the easiest part for explaining the processing, because your colleague already mentioned. So main important thing here is preservation. And other element, especially for sardines and tuna, you will see in the market they are sold as tuna in sunflower oil, tuna in brine water. So fish is steamed, and that steamed fish goes into a salt solution and it is sold in the market. Yeah, that's canned fish or canned in oil, canned in brine solution. So number of different methods are there, and if you are in food product development and other ones, and you have your own way of doing so. Similarly, you have fish infused with other type of oil to make a different product. Yeah, so that is all product development, culinary application. The huge number of ways we can process seafoods. Now, so what happens when we have all these processing? Whether it's seaweed, crustacean or fish bycatches, yeah, they all generate different types of product. Seaweed and current uses and process, as you can see, is agriculture, animal feed, fertilizer, sushi or salad, agriculture, biofertilizer, cosmetics, compost, soups. Yeah, there can be multiple number of products. Yeah, then there is different economic values related to that. These are all estimated based on how much products are prepared by using a minimal processing. Yeah, fertilizer is the most easiest one and important one to get a calcium rich fertilizer or so. Then how we can improve the economic value of current processes by valorizing the side streams produced by any of those biomasses. So yesterday we did discuss whatever bycatches we have, those bycatches can be converted either fertilizer or to get a protein or to get a nutrient, and then can be valorized. Because of those issues, now wild harvest has been on reduction and aquaculture is on increase. Yeah, makes things very simple. Now when it comes to seaweed, so we can focus on alginate, fucoidin, agar, bioplastic films. I'll cover some of those biorefinery aspect later on today or in the next few lectures. Then when it comes to crustaceans, you have chitosan, yeah, calcium carbonate. We'll do one of those experiments here. Astaxanthin and collagen. What is collagen?
Muscle fibers.
How do we extract it? Difference between collagen and fish protein.
It's mostly present near to the skeletal muscle, attached to skeletal muscle.
Okay. I always go for the simple definition. Collagen is also a fish protein. Yeah?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and this is all about in the shells, scales and all are there. And this is actually collagen is also used as a fish gelatin, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So you have gelatin, which is again comes from either in market as pork gelatin, beef gelatin, and fish gelatin. So fish gelatin replaces other two gelatins as far as products are concerned. Then, when it comes to your fish, you have fatty acid, bioactive peptides, and protein. Some of you guys are working on nutraceuticals and other products, yeah? So all those fatty acids and peptides. So what is a peptide?
Sir. The polymer of amino acid like bipeptide bond. When multiple amino acid combine to even two amino acid combine to form dipeptide like that.
Okay. So what is a protein? Protein is a macromolecule which contains nitrogen. Yeah. So how do we estimate protein?
Sir, by Kessel method, we first find the nitrogen content, then we multiply it by some constant, then
By
we get the protein.
Zeldal method, you measure nitrogen content
Yes, sir.
and you multiply by a factor, correct?
Yes, sir.
Right. And how we measure a soil nitrogen? Same method. Yeah. Zeldal method is used to measure a nitrogen of food as well as of soil. Yeah. So either we use 6.25 factor, yeah, most commonly everybody uses that, or 5.7, 6.35, 6.38. How do you choose these factors?
Sir, some of them from plant nitrogen, based on plant and animals, sir. Plants have less than 5 and animals have more than 6 or 6.25, sir.
How? From where we get this factor?
So it's a conversion factor. So based on most probably there are different sources of nitrogens are there. So apart from protein, there are other sources are there. So if you are if other nitrogen sources are there, accordingly we will be calculating like.
Okay, that is correct. Basically, we get these factors based on if we have to do any estimation. This is the, you say, beauty or limitation of all analytical method. We estimate some nutrient and we relate it to a specific thing. Yeah. So all the factors for animal products are higher because they contain lot of non-protein nitrogen. Yeah. If 14% of nitrogen in a body comes from the protein, so factor becomes 100 upon 14. Yeah. If majority of the nitrogen is coming from 18% of nitrogen in a body is coming from nitrogen coming from protein, then 100 upon 18. Yeah. Yeah. So that is the protein nitrogen and non-protein nitrogen. Can you name any non-protein nitrogen?
Ammonia, urea.
Huh?
Ammonia, urea.
Yeah, that is all byproduct one. Yeah, correct. But if animal did not eat anything, so you will not find those one. So basically your DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, RNA,
Ribonucleic acid.
ribonucleic acid. You know purines.
Purines
What are they?
pyrimidines. Adenine and thymine.
Correct. AT and GC. Yeah. And pyridines. Yeah. All these are non-protein nitrogens. Yeah. So because of that we get these factors. So It's not, Zeldal is only a method to estimate nitrogen content. So what are other methods of estimating protein? Bovine serum albumin, yeah, Bradford, yeah, Lorry method, they all have certain limitation. They only estimate a protein containing tryptophan or containing specific amino acids. And that's why all the methods, they have limitation. So the best way is to get all the amino acid profile and then to see this one, right? So protein is basically, that was not the intention of my question, because my question was related to peptide. Protein is basically a polypeptide, correct? Something like a polysaccharide, yeah? So starch is a polysaccharide made up of glucose, yeah? So how many glucose will make it a polysaccharide? More than 10, yeah? Definition wise, you have monosaccharide, disaccharide, trisaccharide,
Oligosaccharide.
oligosaccharide 2 to 10, and then above 10 is polysaccharide. So same way it is a polypeptide. That's why the protein molecular weight becomes very, very important, yeah? Almost all the biological toxins are proteins. Do you agree with that? All the natural toxins are protein, which cannot be digested by human body, and they block the stuff. Venom is a protein, yeah? Spores are also made up of fully of protein. So the larger the protein, it blocks the system, causes toxins, yeah? Right? So that's why the protein is broken down into peptides, and peptides, they have a biological activity, which is the way how we break the structure. So I'm not going to go into it, but if you extract the fish protein with a specific enzyme, you can create a peptides, and those peptides, they have a biological activities. Yeah. So we can get all the proteins, lipids, peptide from fish side streams. You have seaweed stuff, and you have from shells. Yeah. So astaxanthin is because of the pigments present in the shells. In shrimp, you will find that one, and this is soluble in non-polar solvent, correct? You cannot get it in water, and they are quite expensive ingredient for different applications. So this is the way how we have a current economic value, what we obtain from there, and how we can improve its economic value, yeah? So what other things we are doing in terms of circularity? We are valorizing side stream, so we are reducing the impact on the waste and creating new biomaterial, yeah? Now, so what is the best way of sustainable exploitation? The beauty of this diagram is you just change the biomass here, yeah? Whether it's aquaculture seaweed or any of the shellfish, yeah? The seaweed is added because wanted to show the CO2 sink. You convert that into different products, direct product application or different ingredients. You fractionate it, yeah? And then you can create multi-product biorefinery, that is for feed, food, pharmaceuticals, or drugs, skincare products, additives, yeah? So if you take a seaweed, different application, you have and say extract alginate, leftover biomass is having fiber and a protein. Can be used for feed purpose. If it is used for feed purpose, that particular feed for animal can be used for making a food. That's again closing the loop. If you remember, chicken feed, they contains, how many of you eat eggs? You don't eat eggs, yeah? Okay. So eggs, in order to have a proper eggs, you need to have a good shells, yeah? That means you need to have calcium rich diet. That can come from shells. There are some of the companies who are producing calcium for chicken feed just from the shells, yeah? So that particular goes into food and feed. Pharmaceutical, again in a form of peptides, astaxanthin, fucoidin is sulfated polysaccharide, which contains lot of antiviral and lot of medicinal drugs are made out of it. Alginate is also used, something like aloe vera cream and hand creams and lotions. That is another one. Additives, carrageenan and all we already discussed. And whatever is left to our biomass of that can go for biomass production or anaerobic digestion. Yesterday your colleague was explaining, and all those greenhouse gas emissions goes as a CO2 sink for production of seaweed. Yeah. And study of all these input and output is carried out by using LCA. Have you heard of this term? Life cycle assessment. Yeah. So that means you make a boundary and see what is coming out, what is going out, and what is that impact in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and different priority. That's the way it happens. Now, when it comes to seaweed harvesting, whatever way, first processing, that is washing, milling, drying, and seaweed meal that can be sold for whatever purpose we want. Yeah. Then again, processing, packaging, and retail. So all these processing element depends upon what we are using the ingredient for. Something like a wheat which is harvested, wheat is sold like a grain, A product, or it being sold as a flour, B product, and the flour is made into your bread, cake, biscuit, whatever, that's another different product. Yeah. So simple one is, critical part is how do you harvest it and how you do your primary processing. Then you can divide the level of processing depending upon the product. So whatever product you are using, if you're using seaweed only for energy, it's having low value application. Yeah. I know energy is expensive, but burning something for electricity or for stuff is low value application. Similarly, for fertilizer, feed and food, the moment it goes to nutraceutical, cosmeceuticals or high value chemical, you are adding value to that particular ingredient. So this is the way how we can make an economic value of product. Yeah. So if you'll see this particular one, biotransformation, one element is primary processing, which includes mainly cleaning, grinding, washing, milling. Yeah. Can be again secondary processing, that means you're converting that into a specific ingredient, or tertiary, that is trying to get a targeted ingredient. So there is again no borderline what will be the final product of a seaweed. In this case, the final product is dried seaweed or milled seaweed or a powdered seaweed. That's an ingredient itself. For secondary processing, from powdered ingredient to specific type of plant stimulant, animal feed or extracted compounds. Third one is, once you have that particular stream, then you can create number of different ingredients for different applications. Yeah. So once we have this, so where all we can use again for seaweed, this is again what we discussed yesterday, nutrition for sustainable and healthy diets, because they contain a lot of valuable nutrients. And then you have climate smart and environmentally sustainable food systems, circular resource efficient food system, innovations and empowerment of communities. Yeah. So by doing so, we are able to make use of every fraction of seaweed. And similar type of protocol or approach can be made for different species. And if you go into the literature, you will see multiple types of review papers are written based on these biomasses. Now, if you see how the seaweed macro and micro algae are used by different companies, human food, if you see the diagram, it just shows how the relationship between microalgae and macroalgae. Hydrocolloids. What are hydrocolloids? The starch is also hydrocolloid. Yeah. Simple definition is any ingredient which makes a colloidal suspension when mixed with the water becomes hydrocolloids. Yeah. That's the hydrocolloids. And then cosmetics, food supplements, nutraceutical, feed, others, and pharmaceuticals. So both macro and microalgae are used for different applications depending upon the sector. Now, utilization, so majority of the seaweed production is used for alginate. Alginate comes from where? Which species? I never mentioned this species, how do you know it? Alginates comes from Escophyllum, Saccharina latticima, yeah? So some of the seaweeds, they are very good source of alginate. Every seaweed will contain those type of polysaccharide, but some are known for large quantity. Carrageenan is again from Irish moss or Chondrus crispus, specific seaweed, and agar from Gelidium. And there are certain species which are grown even in watery sargassum and all, they also contain these type of species and use up to 15 to 20% of world seaweed production only for these additives which are used in different food product applications. And then if you'll see in last 15 to 20 years, more than 2,600 new product has been introduced into the Europe, which wasn't the case. And as I mentioned yesterday, anything above before 2008 were not under novel food regulation. So it was not a market for seaweed. But now people are drifting towards more sustainable food products and ready to pay premium. And 1 kg of seaweed at the moment costs nearly about 40 euros per kg. Is very expensive, more expensive than what you can get a wheat or a rice at the moment. So demand is growing at a faster rate and dependent upon we are using for fertilizer or for pharma purpose. I'll give you an example of an ingredient called fucoidin. We transferred one of the process to industry. This is known to have around 2 to 10% in fucus vesiculosis. 1 gram of this ingredient on Sigma chemical costs nearly about 400 to 500 euros. Yeah. And now this particular ingredient is used in Brown Thomas, lot of hand creams and different cosmetic products. Yeah. So this is the utilization part of seaweed, whether it's your red seaweed, brown seaweed or green seaweed. Can you give an example of green seaweed? But technically all will be looking green, yeah, but they are classified as red, brown or green. Escargopsis is basically a reddish color, brownish one could be a Escophyllum and green one is UVL vulva. Vulva or Palmaria palmata, these are the species and they are used for protein, carbohydrate, phenols, pigments and different applications, yeah. So for each and every species and each and every process, there is a specific process line. It's very difficult to cover all the processing aspect, but the critical part is washing, drying, milling and the storing for fish, harvesting, cleaning, and then it goes straight for consumption. And that is one of the reasons why losses at the consumer end for seafood is quite high, because we are using it and then we have byproduct which goes straight to bin, yeah. Okay, I'll just show you quickly a history of the seaweed product. Back in 1845 when there was great Irish famine, because majority of the diet in Ireland was based on potatoes. Like in North, you know, if you haven't eaten a chapati, you haven't had your food. In South, if you haven't eaten a rice, you didn't had a food. Same in Ireland, if you haven't eaten a potato, then you didn't had your food, because potato was a staple crop. And when there was a big issue at that time, dulse, that was the seaweed that's called Irish moss, Chondrus crispus is known for carrageenan, which was used as a food purpose. And now the commercial products, the lot of different types of commercial products are available as an additive or as a direct product application. Even this, you can see this particular chips and crisps were developed. And same way, this type of Alaria esculenta is a seaweed which was used directly into making a bread product or extruded snacks. Yeah. So these are all direct application of products. So this will be the last one for this lecture. So what are the bottlenecks and what are the opportunities for seaweed products? One, this is the problems of Europe. It's not pertinent to Asia. One is there is a huge competition for aquaculture production from Asia because there's well advanced China and Southeast Asia, well advanced in aquaculture. Manual labor is used at the moment for aquaculture. That's a huge energy intensive because labor is very expensive. Complex or non-existence of national laws. Earlier, anybody whosoever is living near the sea, whole sea is theirs. They can use it. That's the way rules work. And then license, and there is also a issue with arsenic and iodine content. Yeah. The only advantage of European seaweed compared to Southeast Asian seaweed is presence of heavy metal is huge over here compared to what is there in northern hemisphere because that area is not used for vehicle transport because this is particular Southeast Asia is used for transportation purposes, yeah, for business. So that's another issue. And very few species are used for cultivation. Yeah. Others are present in the water, but they are invasive species. That means the species they came in through the water, but they do not belong to native place. Since the new species comes in, that creates disturbances again into the ecosystem. And then how do you do the breeding program to have a robust seaweed structure? And issues how we can create a biorefinery for seaweeds. Yeah. Even we haven't developed a biorefinery for cereal crops, how we can develop it with this. So with this particular one, I'll close this particular lecture. So do you have any questions so far? So what we covered was what are the bioresources, A, B, how we process it, yeah, processing and aquaculture, yeah, and what will be the best way to do sustainable exploitation of macroalgae. So when we come back in afternoon, we'll have one or two recap slide, recap work from biorefinery aspect of algae, and then we carry on with how do we identify the waste, how best we can valorize it, yeah. And if you have any question, write it and keep it, and we can go through in next session. Thank you.